We're back for another edition of the Vandy Program. Please have my friend Jerry Beach on the show. We're recording this on Monday. It's March 30th, 2026. And so I figured we'd start with what is on everybody's mind from yesterday. Jerry's a sports writer, covers three things, but two of them are right front and center these days. And thing one is college basketball. So, Jerry, welcome to the program. And was yesterday was is Braden Mullins now the shot?
Oh, well, thanks for having me on. It's always good to see you and good to chat. It's funny, I was at the Mets game yesterday, and so I kept an eye on the Tennessee game. Obviously, Michigan blew their doors off, and so then UConn Duke starts. And I should preface this by saying I'm a Connecticut native, so I was never a UConn fan as a kid because I like to be a little different than everybody else. But now you're older and you root for your hometown team, right? Not as much as my alma mater, who I will definitely talk about later today, but we will. But yeah, you root for UConn. So I'm watching the game. I'm finishing up work, and they're getting, it's like 10, 12, 14. They got the 19 at one point, right? Like, oh, man. I said, the heck with this. And, I'll watch the game on the way home. It's like a 40-minute drive home. I'll keep it on the phone. But I'm not going to stay at the park just to watch the whole thing because they're getting their doors blown off. So, like it gets like 7, like a bunch of times, right? They can never break through. I got it right. At least they didn't get at least they didn't get destroyed. Get to the house. They walk into the house. They get to 3. All right, cool. So I say to my wife and daughter, I go into the room and watch it and just, oh, the kid from UConn missed that one-on-one, the front end. They're still down by 2 possessions. And then just like that last sequence, I blurted out all sorts of stuff that I probably can't say here. My wife's like, what's going on? I'm like, UConn just won the most amazing shot ever. So, someone had an incredible tweet last night saying, can you imagine going to UConn and hitting the biggest shot in school history? Because they've had they had Tate George in 1990 to beat it's late, it's Tate, it's great to beat Clemson in the Sweet 16 for their first ever Elite Eight berth. And then Kemba Walker did a bunch of crazy things when they won, was it their last 11 games? They went from the 8th seed in the Big East to the national championship. And they've won 6 national championships. I mean, to be a freshman from Indiana and hit the biggest shot in UConn history, maybe not the biggest shot, but certainly probably the most dramatic. I mean, Tate late, it's late, it's Tate, it's great was great, but that was quote unquote only a Sweet 16 berth. I'm sure there's a lot of history between UConn and Duke. Duke in 1990 beat them on a buzzer beater to go to the Final Four, and UConn had, and it was a classic Christian Laettner miracle thing. Took a step, weaved, and a floater in the lane at the buzzer, and UConn had just turned the ball over. I think someone had the ball right on the sideline, and he dropped it, and they held on. They would have won the game, got to the Final Four. So then they beat them in 99, the title game, upset them. They beat them in the 04 Final Four, won the title game. They beat them again, I think in 15, I think is when they won. So there's this great history there. And then so they've had Duke's number, but to beat them like that and get revenge for the one time Duke won at the buzzer, just incredible. I mean, like I say, I think we'll have to see. I think they should beat Illinois next week. If they don't win the national championship, is it, I was dampened, but if they win the national championship and they beat Michigan, who is just an absolute wagon, or Arizona, same thing, that's that's probably the best shot in school history, right? And one of the best shots in college basketball history. So just incredible. I mean, if you guys haven't seen it yet, check out go on Twitter and check out the Hurley's reaction. Dan Hurley, have you seen that? Dan Hurley's
Uh,
parents,
yes. Yeah, Hurley's parents. I've seen that. I've seen Raftery and Grant Hill,
incredible.
which is
Hurley's
also
mother's
great.
holy, and all
Yeah,
sorts of
we
curse words my mother would never say. Late great mother would never say. Bobby's looks like he's about to pass out, which I would have too. I mean, geez, incredible. So yeah, I mean, it's it's kind of funny. I think we'll probably agree. Maybe we'll talk about it a little bit. But there's no more Cinderellas at least the last couple of years, right? And you always kind of get hooked on Cinderella March Madness on the buzzer beaters by the 14 seed or whatever. That's UConn's not a Cinderella, but actually they're kind of close to Cinderella because they don't play power football. They do, but they don't. They don't play. They're not in the Big 12, Big 10, SEC, and they're trying to squeeze them out. I mean, St. John's and UConn got placed in the same region, which is nonsense, nonsense. And so for UConn to beat Duke, the Blues are blue bloods, to get to the Final Four. Again, they're not a Cinderella, but the people who run the party don't want them there. They wanted Duke versus what is it, Illinois, and then obviously their sites, Michigan, and Arizona. So like I said, we kind of lost the Cinderella, the George Mason, the VCU, the Loyola, making the Final Four or Elite Eight. But, I mean, last night was just perfect March Madness. I mean, we've been watching that shot on clips until 10 years after the heat death of the universe, right? So it's still great. It's a great sport. I wish they'd stop screwing around with it, but it's a great sport.
So
and a great event. Great event.
it is. And I think that there have been some folks tweeting about the fact that this might be one of the best editions of March Madness ever. I mean, you do have a couple of buzzer beaters in the early rounds. You've got a Cinderella and High Point. Um, it's certainly up there when it comes to drama. But yeah, the thing about yesterday. So I want to see the comparison between Leitner 92 Duke over Kentucky and yesterday Mullins UConn over Duke.
Huh.
I think what makes this one, and I'm trying not to do the recency bias thing,
right?
but I think what makes this one, and to your point, we'll have to see what happens when the tournament is done. But I think what makes this one even more amazing is that Duke trailed 2-0 and then didn't trail until the end of the game.
They trailed for what, 5 seconds or something, right?
Yeah.
The last 4/10 and whatever it was at 2-0.
Yeah, the last 4/10 of a second.
Yeah. I would say, I didn't even think about that. Jeez, that's a good point. I would say that this one is much more holy bleep, 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 bleep than that one. Because, that was a second and a half and 2 seconds left. They had time to set up a play.
Yeah.
And Rick Pitino has won a bunch of national championships since then. And he will outlive us all. He's the Keith Richards of basketball. And he will go to his someday he'll no longer be with us. We'll be done for another 40 or 50 years. And he's going to say, I can't believe I didn't have a guy on Grant Hill. I can't believe that. I can't believe that. Because that he didn't have a guy on Hill, did he? Hill just threw the ball to Leitner, right?
Exactly.
So Kentucky or Duke had time to design a play. This was complete unfiltered chaos. And it tells you UConn is not that Duke isn't, but UConn's a really well-coached team. That was just chaos, right? Tip ball, went to the backcourt to someone, and went to the best player, Caravan, who said, "Here you go." hit one from 45 feet. Like, so to me, I didn't think about that. I mean, the Leitner one is incredible because probably the best college basketball game ever played. I mean, last night was fun, but Duke blew their doors off for 30 minutes. Duke Kentucky might be the best game ever played in any sport. I mean, that was what 103, 102 or something like that, right?
Something like that.
Regional final. So was this, obviously. I mean, that was just an incredible basketball game. This was a good game with a great ending. If Mullins misses that shot, we're like, what was he doing hoisting from 60 feet?
Yeah.
Kind of forget about Duke. Yeah, to me, that last night was more incredible.
So nobody from, I guess the one other key difference is that no one from UConn stepped on any of the Duke players.
People don't. I love to talk about this because people don't understand how much people can hate Duke, and because Leitner got away with everything, he stepped on Rod Seller's face. And my best friend from back home, shout out to Matt Edwards, is a huge UConn fan, and he has an autographed picture of Rod Sellers punching Leitner. Remember on the bottom of the scrum there?
Yeah.
He has an autographed picture of Rod Sellers. Rod Sellers autographed his picture of him punching Christian Leitner for my friend Matt. Oh, they hate Duke up there. Not only do they beat them all the time now. Duke got that one time in '90, broke their hearts, and UConn probably would have won. Well, that was '90 was UNLV, right? Oh, okay, they probably would have won the championship then. But that UConn was just, they were nothing. They were in the Big East, but all their teams were good. And then year three of Calhoun, they made the Elite Eight. So, that one, that was, there's nothing like your first, right? The first great year you have, that one always sticks with UConn. And that's the dream team, the dream season. They didn't win the championship, but they're still called the dream team, the dream season. So to keep beating Duke like that, in just these incredible ways. But yeah, Christian Leitner. Yeah. Did you see his documentary on ESPN2 or ESPN 30 for 30?
I've not seen that, but I'll
It was really good.
I'll
It was
make a
called
point of
"I
watching.
Hate Christian Leitner," and he was really funny on. He was really self-effacing, and yeah, I was a jerk. Blah blah blah. And look at basketball players. They're wired differently. One thing I've learned over the years is they're not that they're not all there, but it's just a different level of competition out there. And like even like football is more violent. Boxing obviously is more violent, but like football and boxing, there's sort of the sense of we are, I don't want to say warriors, but like certainly in boxing, we're beating our bodies up together for a common goal, trying to beat each other. But at the end of the game, there's a real commonality in what we've done. Basketball is just like trying to eat through the other guy's soul. Competitiveness kicks in. You just want to, blankety blank the other guy.
So, handicap the two games for me. I guess the first one is going to be UConn against Illinois.
Yeah, I mean, I really like, I mean, after last night, I really like UConn. I always thought that UConn Duke winner, and I thought it'd be Duke. I mean, Duke is, was I think they were number one overall seed, right? They weren't number one
They
in
were.
KenPom, but they're
Yeah.
the number one overall seed. I figured they'd win. So I like UConn. I haven't seen a ton of Illinois, but it's kind of cool that they made it. Was it first time since 2001 or something, right?
2005.
2000. Oh, right. Bruce Weber, my bad. They lost North Carolina.
Yeah, Bruce Weber.
It's Arizona 2001.
He wore the orange sport coat as a tip to Lou Henson in the final.
Yep.
And they lost to Scotty Mays.
Carolina was loaded that year. No one was beating them.
Scotty Mays' kid.
Yeah.
Yeah, do I sound like somebody who grew up in Indiana?
Yeah, you're an Illinois guy, right? You're a Midwest guy.
Well, I'm in Chicago, suburban Chicago, but I grew up in Indiana. But I couldn't remember his.
Mays kid, yeah, from Indiana, right?
Yeah, I couldn't remember his name, so I'm calling him Scotty Mays' kid.
Mays kid.
And I still have burned into my brain that Kyle Macy broke Scott Mays' arm. The whole that was 75, right?
I think so. So he was he on the 76 team?
Scott May was on the 76 team as well, but the 75 team could have won the title were it not for getting Kyle Macy breaking Scott May's arm.
Yeah.
So there's a decent amount of bad blood. I believe
still there.
If memory serves, I believe Kyle Macy started at Purdue and then went to Kentucky, something like that. So, anyways, now I'm dating myself.
Now think of Larry Bird start in Indiana and going to work at a fast food joint. They're going to end up at Indiana State.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you've got the first trip since 2005.
Yep. I mean, I like UConn in that one, but again, maybe just like you said, recency bias. Arizona, Michigan. I mean, that's probably a national championship game. I mean, those teams are loaded. Michigan, the KenPom early in the year was like probably I think the best of all time. I think it's come down a little bit, but they're like they're 35 plus points better than. I'm looking up to confirm, but they are like 35 plus points better than the average Division I team. Let's see, Michigan. Oh my God, 39. So yeah, they should beat the average Division I team by 39 points on neutral court. Arizona's second at 38. Illinois the fourth at 34, and UConn's at 29 and ninth. So to me, that Michigan-Arizona game is the national championship game.
But it's dangerous.
It's
dangerous to say that.
It is. I hope whoever wins that game pulls a Herb Brooks. If you lose tonight, you'll take it to your grave. You're right. I mean, look, we've seen great Duke in '99. I think they had 2 losses, and UConn beat them in the championship game. And so, yeah, right. I mean, one game, anything can happen. Especially if you. I shouldn't diminish Illinois, but just the recency bias. If UConn can get to Monday night, they've been there before. They've got guys who've been there before. But Michigan, my God, I mean, look at some of these scores. I mean, early in the year they beat Gonzaga by 40 points, 3 straight games. Beat Auburn by 30. Sorry, Bruce Pearl. Gonzaga by 40. Rutgers, who's a Big Ten team technically, by 41. They beat McNeese State, which won their conference by 51. I'm sorry, 41, only 41. And their losses were to Michigan by 3 and Duke by 5 and Purdue by 8 in the Big Ten title game. But come on. I don't count, big time conference championship games. They're going to the tournament. They don't care. So, I mean, Arizona's just as good. I mean, so you're right. You can't assume that whoever wins Saturday night is going to win the whole thing, but it's going to be a hell of a game. I just, the little bit I've seen of Michigan, I love watching them. And Dusty May's a genius. Here's a great little story for you, real quick. 2 years ago, I covered the NCAA East Regional in Brooklyn, Barclays Center. That bracket included Dan Hurley with UConn, obviously, John Shayer, Duke, Mark Byington, coaching James Madison, and Dusty May, coaching Florida Atlantic. What a whopper of a bracket! And they all obviously won their first round games because actually Florida Atlantic beat Northwestern in overtime, first game of the tournament, and then Madison blew out Wisconsin, and then they both lost the second round, and they were both with their next employer the next day. Like, oh yeah, we're looking for a comeback. We started something great here in Madison and Florida Atlantic, and they're like, all right, we got to go.
Yeah.
I've already got it figured out. So,
Well, you didn't.
anyways, I see Dusty May, like, holy moly! 2 years ago, I was seeing this guy in Brooklyn coaching Florida Atlantic, and now he's got his absolute wagon at Michigan.
Yeah, and you didn't think that he was gonna
No,
stay at Florida
no,
Atlantic. He just seems like
couldn't.
you look at the guy. He seems like a big time coach, right? And he's got the demeanor. And even after they showed him when his son got into the game late, and apparently the entire team is very close knit. They love every guy one on down to guy
12, yep,
15 or whatever.
yep,
They love each other. But just seeing the mom going nuts in the stands, and then Dusty's reaction after
right.
the son drains
Yeah,
the three.
he's a stud, and the problem is not the problem, but like you said, you can't stay at Florida Atlantic. You can make the Final Four. They're not going to give you a break the next year. Okay, you're a real team. I'll give you a 4 seed. No, they're going to make it stick you with a 9, playing Florida Atlantic, or playing Northwestern. They got to play Duke in the second round. You can see the same thing with the guy in St. Louis, Josh Schertz. He's not there long, not because St. Louis isn't good, and not because he can't build a powerhouse in the A10, but and I read yesterday they have like $10 million in NIL, which is a lot of money anywhere, especially in the A10. But this year they go 27-5 or something. They drew Georgia the first round and beat them by about 40. So there's a ceiling if you're not a power school, and even going back to UConn and St. John's, getting stuck in the same bracket was malpractice. So Dusty got the Michigan gig, and that's the type of gig now. It's like either that's his gig, or he can go to the bluest of blue bloods, Kansas, and see North Carolina. I'm not sure if North Carolina's a blue blood anymore, but that's a topic for their time probably. You know, he can go where this is it. He's punched his ticket, and you'll see the same thing with Josh Schertz in a year or two when he ends up wherever he ends up, wherever power school he lands with.
Although you could make a case, because if you think about St. Louis University, it's the only game in town and anywhere nearby. So if they've got 10 million in NIL money, they're probably, I think I read that Carolina's budget this year was 12 million for a team that lost in the first round. Right. So that's probably fired. The kind of thing that dooms a Hubert Davis. But if you can get lucky and get a couple of games run in the tournament, if you're St. Louis, and you certainly, I mean, it's not a basketball crazy media market, but there is no other game in town right. in basketball unless they bring back the Spirits of St. Louis.
Bob Costas, right?
Yeah, with Costas right. doing the play-by-play. Okay, so if you had to say, it sounds like you're picking UConn in game one. If you had to say game two,
Michigan.
I
know Arizona's loaded too, but I just again a little bias having seen Dusty May a couple times in person, not in person, but in the arena. So I really like Michigan. I've liked them all year. They're my pick. A few weeks ago we made the bracket, so did not have to beat in UConn. Had to beat in. It was Florida. Had to beat in Florida. Got tripped up. So for the 5,000th straight year, my $5 donation goes up in flames.
Yeah, I didn't make a donation this year.
I made a couple.
Decided not to. Last year I donated, and one of the donations was picking all 1 seeds, all better seeds, all the way through.
Yeah.
And I still didn't win the pool, so didn't even finish in the money.
Number 1 seeds, right, in the finals, Final Four.
That's correct. Correct.
You're living the wrong life.
So here's some trivia for you, because I was actually on another edition of my podcast last week talking to my buddy John Puccio about a whole host of things. One of those was basketball. He's a big St. John's guy. And we mentioned in passing that all of these conferences had to have the names big in them
Yeah.
for one reason or another. So I've been studying this. I'm probably going to do an article on this. It's well, here's what I've learned. 2026 will have only the second time where all four teams will be from a big conference. Conference with big in the name.
Big Ten, Big East. Arizona's Big 12. I can't keep track of where Arizona is.
Yeah,
Arizona's Big
Arizona's
12? Okay.
Big 12 now.
What a mess that
So
is.
take a stab. The
Wow.
last and only other time that happened.
Well, it wasn't 85 because Memphis State was not in a big, right? Because Big
Memphis
East was
State was not. They were Metro
Sun
back
Belt.
then.
Metro, okay. It was three Big East teams. Geez. 88 was Oklahoma, Kansas from the Big Eight. Who else was in the semifinals that year? Was it Duke in the final? Was Duke in the semifinal that year?
Yep.
So it's not 88. 89
You're
was
close,
Big
though.
East.
You're close.
87 was Indiana, Big Ten, Big East. UNLV, Big West. Was UNLV the Big
You got
West
it.
back then? That's 87.
1987.
And the other one was Indiana. No, Indiana won. Indiana,
Yeah,
Syracuse.
Indiana, the Big Ten.
UNLV.
Syracuse, the Big East. Providence, the Big East.
Providence. Oh, that's right.
Yeah,
Rick
and
Pitino goes back to Rick Pitino again. Holy, I might have forgotten that one. I should remember that one because that was one of the first
So
Cinderellas in my lifetime.
that's the only other time. And
Great.
there have been appearances by conferences called the Big Six, the Big Seven, the Big Eight, the Big Nine, the Big Ten,
With
and the
16
Big 12.
teams.
There has not been a Big 11 appearance.
Maybe the Big East can change it to that. They have 11
Right.
teams. Yep.
Right.
11 teams for now. Yeah, that's great. I knew I saw something. I get it. It's all four schools from a big, but I did not know. That's great. That's fun, quirky stuff. I like that.
So there you go. Yes, it's quirky. And so speaking of the word quirky, that's a great segue because you have a blog called "I'll Be Quirky," where you talk about your first love, which would be your alma mater, which would be the
CA champion,
conference champions this year, the Hofstra Pride
/ Flying Dutchman. Yeah.
/ Flying Dutchman. So congratulations, because I know
you.
you may not. I right before so Hofstra last won in 2020, and that before everything imploded in the world, you and I talked for an article that you ended up running. I think a year later.
Maybe two. I don't know. It was 21. Certainly 21 or 22.
So the background is this.
Yes.
I, Dave, was the sports information director at Chicago State University, which was for one shining season, it was part of the East Coast Conference.
With Hofstra.
And we did not connect then, even though you had a date the night of the championship game, or Hofstra won the conference tournament that year, 1994, in Buffalo, New York. I was there. Chicago State lost in the first round
to Hofstra, I believe.
To Hofstra, yeah.
So Hofstra that year was 6-20, and there was no automatic bid for the ECC because they did not meet the minimum requirements for a bid. They had lost their bid in 91, 92. They're down to 7 teams, but not 6. What was it? 6 continuous years of D1 membership. They had Buffalo had just joined D1, Central Connecticut State, and Brooklyn, I think, was all about to fall out. So 92, Hofstra played as an actual independent. And so that was the year I decided to go there. I graduated high school in 91, went to junior college back home in Connecticut, where I was, the North Carolina fan. Everyone else was rooting for UConn because they wanted to be different. Smart move. So then that year, this is 92, you read the newspaper all the time, and so you see the stand, and I wanted to go to a college that had Division I sports program. Oh, okay. Hofstra, Notre Dame are independents? Whoa! Hofstra must be good. All right, I'll go there. So, I go there, and then I get there. They're in the East Coast. They put it together for one more year just for, as you know, just to have some semblance of a schedule. Just to have some. You couldn't win. You couldn't make this a tournament, but at least you could play for something. At least you had a shell of a schedule in place. Okay, so at least we don't have to worry about filling 5 games. We got to worry about filling 20 games, not 25. So Hofstra is Northeastern Illinois, which no longer plays sports, right?
They no longer play
So
NCAA sports, correct?
yeah. Hofstra, Northeastern Illinois, Chicago State, Central Connecticut State, which is where my parents met and where I would have gone if I didn't go to Hofstra. It's all connected. Buffalo, and Troy State in Alabama. Troy is not a state, but nobody cared about geography. So,
They've
East Coast
wisened up.
Conference, yeah, East Coast Conference was Buffalo way up here, right? Central Connecticut, Hofstra, Long Island, Troy State in Alabama, and back up to Chicago, Northeastern Illinois.
So if you think about it, it was really a trend-setting conference because now the Atlantic Coast
right.
has two teams on the Pacific Ocean.
We were way ahead of things, man.
Yeah. So this was something. So your love of Hofstra started way back when. You've covered them for
394
ages, and
right
they
about the
got
blog.
Back to the tournament this year for the first official tournament appearance since
2001.
And what was special about the 2001 season was
Jay Wright's last game as Hofstra head coach. Yeah, so Hofstra, I had this thing, I was like, because there's stuff going on in the world, right? So Hofstra in 2020 wins the tournament, and then, which, look, if they lost, it was getting shut down, but they won, and they got shut down. If they lost, they were going to shut down anyway, but they won. 2020, here we are in 2026, and there's stuff going on. And a friend of mine texted me that weekend because Hofstra was a 3 seed in the CAA, and the 1 and 2 seeds got blown out before Hofstra even took the court. 1 seed lost at noon on Sunday. The 2 seed lost at 6:30 on Sunday. So Hofstra played like 9 o'clock.
This is this year?
This year, yeah. They didn't do anything. They were the overwhelming favorite by the time they took the court for the first time because they played the 3-6, which is the last game of the night on Sunday, last game of the quarterfinals. So my buddy texts a buddy of mine who covers a guy named Zach Braziller, a great buddy of mine, covers the St. John's for the New York Post. He texts me. He's like, "Hey, it's wide open for Hofstra." I'm like, "Yeah, don't hex it." He goes, "You know what's going to happen?" I said, "What?" He goes, "They're going to win the tournament, and then it gets canceled for World War III." I said, "Don't say that! Don't say that! Don't joke."
What was the date? What was the date of this game?
Oh, it was the same date as 2020.
Okay.
So Hofstra won the championship on Tuesday, March 10th, 2020. And then to this year's March 10th, 2026, I'm like, all right, well, stuff started happening, whatever. Let's at least win the tournaments. So they played. I don't know if this one's going to get completed. Hopefully it does. So, yeah, so it's weird. Like, it was weird. There were 13 teams that won bids that year. And obviously the Kansases were going, the Blue Bloods were going, but they didn't officially get a berth. And so this year included 2 teams from that group that didn't get to dance from the mid-majors. Hofstra and North Dakota State won the Summit, which is sort of an offshoot of the ECC, right? ECC became the Mid-Con.
This is true because the Summit was, the 2 of the schools that left the ECC ended up joining
Chicago State,
the Mid-Continent Conference. Which was known as the Mid-Con, and then the Mid-Continent shuffled the deck a little bit and then ended up becoming the Summit League. But a good chunk of its members left the Summit League or the Mid-Con for the Horizon.
Valpo, yeah.
Which had a different name back then that escapes me.
Yeah. Not Midwestern something, right?
I'd have to look it up.
I'll look it up. I'm not trying to be crazy.
I digress. So, and this year Hofstra played against Alabama.
Alabama, yep.
In the tournament.
Yep.
In Tampa, right?
Yeah. So we'd gone to the games in 2000, 2001, in Buffalo in 2000. ECC city. 2001 was Winston-Salem. And so this year, they were playing Buffalo and Greenville. And I thought they'd go to Philly. I really did. But a good friend of mine who does a lot of bracketology is like, no, because he knew that the seed lines. He's like, they're not going to Philly unless they fall to 15, which is not going to happen. But I thought they'd still go to Philly just because, gas and all that stuff. And the flights are hard. I thought they'd try and every team that flies. I think I read if you're within 8 hours, you drive. It's a chartered bus. Obviously, you're not renting a bus. And if it's not that, you fly. It's all chartered, instantly charged at all. So they're not going through the rigmarole you and I would go through. But I still thought with everything going on, they tried doing Philly, and I lost that bet because my daughter's like, let's go to DC because the conference championship game was in DC. Let's go to DC, and they won on a very what now might be the second best shot of March. Their freshman point guard hit a 35-foot off balance 3-pointer, banked off in overtime to give them a win with 0.3 of a second left, broke a tie. I guess that's not the best shot of March anymore. I guess still second though. So anyway, Molly, my daughter's like, let's go. I'm like, Molly, we can't go. Blah blah. Plus, I think they're going to play in Philadelphia. We'll go then. I lost that one. So yeah, they play in Tampa. So it was kind of not say a bummer, but we didn't get to see it in person. But it's just too pricey. So yeah, they played Alabama and they got out to like a 10-point lead. And for like 5 minutes, it was that perfect. Like you always hope if you go to a mid major, you always hope to make the tournament, and you kind of hope to have like a little. You hope to win, but if you don't win, you hope to get a little moment where like you're the team, and they had that little moment, and it was cool because they won on Tuesday night. They didn't play again until Friday, so they had like 10 days to kind of revel in it. They won on Tuesday, came home on Wednesday. My wife and daughter and I went, watched them come back on, and they held up the punch ticket thing and all that. And then Wednesday, so Thursday they're off for practice. They practiced Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Sunday they had a suction party on campus, which of course we went to 1,000. My wife and I, like wearing old clothes, going back there. And then they didn't play till Friday at 2:30. Like you feel bad for these teams that either got to play in the first four, which is nonsense. The champions should have to play in the first four, or you went on a Saturday or a Sunday and you play on Thursday at 12:30, right? Mm-hmm. And then it's over before you know it. Hofstra had like 10 days to revel in it, and they didn't play till mid-afternoon on Tuesdays on Friday. So, yeah, so like they were up 10 points, and they had the ball, chance to go up 13 or 14, 13 points a couple times. If you can get 10 points is a lot. When you get to 15, you start to holy, this is a lot of.
Yeah.
And but Alabama, my God, I mean, and they lost to Michigan by a fairly significant amount. Touch how good Michigan is. Like it's just different watching these dudes. Like you can just the skill level is just different. And like I swear, it's the weirdest thing. But like their shots, like they never even touch net. They'd hit 30-foot 3-pointers. Like just like did that go in? Like it just swish. Like it's just like the softest swish ever. It just it's like they're SEC, and they didn't let the guy play because of the drug charge, but he probably could have played for something else. So it's hard to beat. It's hard to beat but they had a 10-point lead. And then Alabama just destroyed Texas Tech the next day or 2 days later. Like, all right, it looks pretty good. But you had a 10-point lead on Alabama, and then they blew out a power conference school on Sunday. So it was fun. Again, we'd love to see them win because that's what you want to see, right? But they had a little moment where like, oh, people like, holy, A, where's Hofstra? B, what's a Hofstra? And C, whatever Hofstra is, they're beating the pants off of Bama. So it was cool. And like, especially for people, if you went through 2020 as a Hofstra fan, we understood. No one ever said, oh, why can't they play the tournament? We got it. Crazy stuff was happening. We got it. But it was not anywhere near the biggest issue of the day, but it was still a disappointment. And it was weird later on in that month or later in that year, obviously everyone tried to come back to school, right? And, open up slowly. The head coach suffered a stroke the first day school started, for the first day of summer session, when the basketball players were coming back. So he had a stroke, and it was very serious, and he survived, thankfully, but he had to resign, he had to retire. And so his last game was like double heartbreak. His last game, they don't get to go to the tournament because of the pandemic. And then they don't even get a chance to build a repeat with him because he got sick. So anyway, this year, Hofstra flew him down with the team. And He went to Tampa. And he's now coaching. He's an assistant, a special assistant at LaSalle out in Philly, which is Joe, his name is Joe Mahalik. Great guy, great man, great coach. This is alma mater, and so he's kind of a special assistant there. But yeah, they won on Tuesday, and apparently the ADs called him up and said, listen, we got room in the charter for you. Wherever we end up, we got room. If we fly, we got room in the charter for you and Mary, your wife.
Sweet.
It was nice for Hofstra fans. Again, 2020, a lot was going on. But in the basketball sense, it was a cool, everyone kind of got to experience it, whether it's a fan or as the coach did, or as the staffers did, right? That were still there in 26 years later. So it was cool to Hofstra to kind of get that moment that they didn't get. And nothing will ever make up for 2020 in a million ways, but at least basketball wise, you got to experience it. And that was kind of cool. So I thought when Coach Mahalik went down there, I was, oh, we're going to Sweet 16 now. And we're going to be like Howard Dean. We're going to beat Michigan. We're going to beat Tennessee.
Whee!
Whee! But it's all right. We went to the tournament. We got to dance. They played it. They're still playing at this point. When Hofstra won, I said, cut the bleep, 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 global dictators and microscopic germs. Hofstra has a tournament to play in. Like every day I would do okay, Hofstra has been champion for 24 hours and no NBA games have been canceled. We're going good so far. And it's been 48 hours. The gas is high, but nothing else is going on. Keep it up. So it happened, and then we're glad it did, and let's hopefully we can do it again next year. That'd be great.
And you've got an alum coaching, right? Speedy
Yes,
Claxton.
Speedy Claxton. Speedy was Jay Wright's recruit. So I got there in 93. You'll know this as a fellow Van. Butch Van Bredikoff was Hofstra's head coach.
Yeah.
Oh, you covered the team back then too. So he was 72 or 73. It'd be his last year. And as you know, Hofstra was not in a real league. So it's like, okay, we're in no man's land here. We got to get this right. We got to get in a league and get a coach who's on the way up. So the story I've heard is that they were had a few other candidates, and Raleigh Massimino, talking about March Madness, right, was at UNLV after his ill-timed exit from Villanova, and he had kept saying to Hofstra's AD, "You got to give this guy named Jay Wright a chance. Just talk to him. Talk about the Final Four, half an hour at the pool or whatever." So the late Jim Garvey, Hofstra's AD, said, "Okay, I'll talk to him." But I think he's already like, I got a guy in mind. Well, Jay blew his socks off. Half an hour turned to 2 hours. And I think it was April 10th, 1994, Hofstra announced it was in the North Atlantic Conference, which is now the America East. And so, sorry, we had to leave you in the mid-con, sorry. And I think they're the only one to leave, right? Chicago State, Northeastern Illinois, Troy, Buffalo, and Central all went to the mid-con, at least briefly, right?
Yeah.
Again,
that sounds right.
The mid-con with teams on the very far east of the continent, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, so Jay got hired the same day that they changed leagues. And the first year was, first 2 years, they weren't great. Back then, you could build a program, right? So the third year, they got Speedy, and Speedy is from Queens. I'm sorry, Speedy's from Long Island, but he went to Christ the King in Queens, which is a basketball hotbed. And he was the fifth best player on his high school team with Lamar Odom, Eric Barkley, and two other guys whose names I can't remember right now. Maybe Omar Cook. I think he might be a little bit younger. But they had four high Division I kids getting recruited from day one. And Speedy, the point guard, youngest kid in the team, little kid, smallish guy. So, Hofstra would go watch him and say, this guy's compete level's off the charts. He's the perfect guy for us. So they got him letter of intent junior year or something. Senior year, all those guys graduated, and he just went off. He became their best player, and everyone came at him. St. John, Villanova, just Georgia Tech. The big schools came at him. And, let's not kid ourselves. NIL didn't start with NIL, right?
Yeah.
People came to Speedy and we can help. We'd like you to play ball here.
Yes.
Money, Right. He said, no, I'm staying in Hofstra. I told him, I gave my word. And yeah, he's actually from Hempstead, which is the town in which Hofstra is located. Folks were living there. And they said, no, you're going to go to Hofstra. And he went there for 4 years. Crazy, right?
That's awesome.
Crazy. Yeah. So, he went there 4 years, became a number top 10 draft. I think he was a lottery pick, but blew his knee out. Training camp with the Sixers in late 2000. Never quite the same after that. He never quite, his nickname Speedy. And he kind of lost. He didn't lose it, but he lost that little extra something, right? That makes you go from the fifth best player on your high school roster to a top 20 draft pick. So he played 10 years, which is great. But a lot of it was on the shelf, a lot of knee issues, and then came back to here in the Hofstra had a coaching change in 2013. And to go back to Joe Mahalik, came on with him as the special assistant, last guy on the spot, and he climbed his way up. I have a great story that they lost the conference title game in 2016 out in Baltimore. Lost to North Carolina Wilmington in overtime. So we all went down. My daughter was a lot younger then, easier to pull off. So we're driving home, middle of the night, right, all bummed out. And we stopped at the first, I don't know if you've ever driven up the East Coast, but stopped at the first rest stop north of Baltimore in Maryland, and get out of the car, gets on a drink, stretch, and who's out there but Speedy driving home with a student manager. Like the student managers had to drive home, whatever reason, maybe the players were staying the extra night because the game at like 9:30 or whatever. But Speedy grinded it. He was a great player, is a great player, a living legend. But he did it. He climbed up from special assistant to head coach, drove home with a student manager the night that they lost in overtime in the conference title game, and then moved. I think he was second in command. And then obviously when Joe got sick, he took over for good in 2021, 22. And if you haven't seen it, I'll send it to you later. But if anyone listen to this, try to Google Speedy Claxton in the Twitter search engine. Tears of joy when they won the championship. And like everybody, it's a big deal at this mid-major level to get to the tournament, because if you don't win your tournament, you're not going. But Speedy, this is like not that he needed to be cemented, but he was a great player at Hofstra. Won a conference tournament, played an NCAA tournament with Hofstra. They played Oklahoma State in 2000. Now he did it as a coach. That's, Hubert Davis is a great story too, but you got institutional advantages in North Carolina. Yeah. You're going to make the tournament.
Yeah.
Hofstra had to win. They had to win, 3 games in 3 days. They had to do it, or they were going to, maybe play in the NIT. So anyway, Speedy's a real stoic guy, real competitive guy, just crying. And my favorite scene of the whole thing is he grabs the SID, who he's known, because the SID was a student manager when he was there. So he grabbed, and sometimes, not here, but sometimes, as you know, I don't tell you this, SID, sometimes they don't get the treatment they deserve, right? Sometimes they're not appreciated by the staffers, by the higher ups that they deal with. And so there's a clip at the end of Hofstra's, Hofstra won, they scored. Dave Ryan, the great Dave Ryan, is doing the announcement. Hofstra wins the CAA, and they do and there's a scene of Steven, the Hofstra SID, hey Speedy, he did, kind of give him a half hug, and Speedy just grabs him, hugs him, and pours his face into his shoulder, crying. It's incredible.
That's awesome.
Goose was talking about it. So it was cool. He's not just an alum. He's probably the most famous alum in school history. You could argue him and Wayne Corbett. And this is not a Hofstra podcast, so I will not do that to you today. But it's Speedy Claxton or Wayne Corbett. In all seriousness, Speedy Claxton is up there. If you hear Speedy Claxton, oh, that guy went to Hofstra. If you hear Hofstra, oh, that's Speedy Claxton school. So to actually make the tournament with them as a coach is incredible. And it's a great story. And it's just, again, you don't want to compare anything to 2020 because so much went on in 2020. So many things were lost in 2020. But at the very small, granular basketball level, it was cool that Hofstra got to enjoy this and got to play in the tournament, and that so many people who were connected to 2020 got to enjoy it in 2026 as well. So it was awesome. So I'm sure all your listeners are like, who's this Hofstra guy? I like talking about it, so thank you.
The other thing that you're known for in quite a few circles is covering the Mets.
Yep.
So
that's Hofstra's an interesting combo, that's for sure.
How far apart are they geographically?
Not far at all, but it's New York traffic, so you never know.
Okay.
Mets to Hofstra, and again, the Hofstra thing is more kind of just a passion thing. The Mets thing is more, I'm not screaming. Well, I am screaming, but I'm not like, oh, the Mets won the next 3 days. I'd say you can get there, half an hour on a good day. I won't bore the details of the highways, but it's a direct route highway, two highways, right? But again, 2 highways wise. But you never know from one day to the next how it's going to be. So, it's funny. Hofstra always says, we're 20 minutes from Manhattan. No, we're not. We're 20 miles from Manhattan, but it's an hour train ride. But everything in New York is 20 minutes from somewhere, right?
Right.
So we're 20, half an hour from Citi Field / the Old Shea Stadium. So so it's a good area, and they're off to an interesting start because they always are, right? 3 games in, you're still like, what's going on here?
So what are the headlines for people who don't? I mean, I'm in the Midwest, so I'm following the Cubs, and I can tell you, headline is the Cubs are now 1-2.
Count doesn't hit it yet.
All you need to know, right?
Yeah, Bregman didn't work out. Oh God, it'll be fine.
But what's the Mets headline going into 2026?
It's what are they doing? Do they know what they're doing? They had a great run in 24. made the LCS, and probably gave the Dodgers their best run. I should say the Padres had them down 2-1, but once the Dodgers ended up blowing out the Yankees in the World Series in five, what they call a gentleman's sweep. It was 5 games, should have been four, and they were just toying with them. The Mets, for a hot minute, looked like they might steal the series. So 2024, they make the LCS, and they did it with a core of guys who've been there a while, and then they kind of doubled down on it. They signed Juan Soto, for 765 cool dollars, and all right, sorry, so 765 million, and all right, they were kind of a World Series favorite last year, and then had a great start, best record in baseball through June 12th, and then they were awful after that. They think the fourth worst record in the majors. It's the playoffs by a game, not even by a game, by the tiebreaker. So you talked about that Duke thing. They trailed for 5 seconds on Sunday. The Mets weren't out of a playoff spot for the last 150 games, but they lost a tiebreaker on game 162 and missed out. The GM is newish, third year going on a job, and this was his chance to retool the team the way he wanted. And he wanted to improve the defense, which was not good last year. He wanted to improve the situational hitting, which was not great. But to do that, he had to get rid of 3 of their longest tenured players: Brandon Nimmo, Pete Alonso, who everyone knows, of course, and Jeff McNeil. And they didn't re-sign Edwin Diaz, who I'm pretty sure everybody knows. You guys know about his trumpet entrance, right?
Of course.
Yeah. I mean, it was theatrical. So each move by itself made sense. Like Nimmo in particular, he has 5 years left on his contract. He's 33. He's 33, and there's a great analogy in the New York Post that he's a guy who worked so hard to get here, he might be out of gas. He was a guy who was a jumbo draft pick out of Wyoming. His school didn't play high school baseball. The Mets just said, this kid's got skills. He played Legion ball. We really like his makeup. And his makeup was off the charts. Just the nicest guy in the world. But all right, we got 5 years left. If you're in the Mets, we got 5 years left of this guy. His defense declined. He's not a great left fielder. Forget center and right. He's not a great left fielder. We can't DH him because he's a good hitter, but he's not a DH. And he's not a 35 home run a year guy. What are we going to do? So they traded for Marcus Semien, old White Sox prospect, in your neck of the woods, for the Rangers. Semien had a shorter term deal, older but shorter deal, play second base, a good Gold Glove second baseman. That makes sense. Alonso, not a great defender, wanted 5 years, had Scott Boras, was not going to take a hometown discount. But it's hard to lose not just homegrown talent, but guys like that who get New York. And same thing with Nimmo. You could stink for a week and a half, it doesn't bother them. They're not going to get booed. They just survived and thrived in New York. But they really want to improve their defense. They let them go to Baltimore. I think the Diaz thing was I think they just screwed that up. I don't think that was their plan. I think they thought they'll lose Alonso, they'll trade McNeil, they'll trade Nimmo. But I think they thought we'll get Diaz back. But they signed Devin Williams from the Brewers, from the Yankees via the Brewers, on a Friday afternoon or something. And then I think that the buzz is that annoyed Diaz because Williams has closer experience, even though everyone assumed Williams will pitch the 8th. Diaz pitched the 9th. They'll have a great bullpen. Diaz goes to the Dodgers, and the story is that the Mets offered him X amount and said, all right, this is our starting offer. And then the Dodgers said, we'll give you 75 or 69 million because they're the Dodgers, right? Hold on. It's like the old Mr. Burns line when he's in front of the judge. Reach into my front pocket for the fine. Remember that line? He gets fined for something. So they gave him 69 million for 3 years, and he said, okay, I'm going out west. So that I think that really shook them up. That was a stunner. But everything else, they wanted to improve their defense. So they did that. They did that with Marcus Semien at second, Luis Robert Jr., another White Sox, in center. If he can stay healthy, he's won a Gold Glove. Where it got weird was that their corner infielders are now Bo Bichette at third, the old shortstop, Dante's son from our generation, and Jorge Polanco at first base, both playing brand new positions. So it's are you playing? It's like the money ball, right? Tell them first base ain't hard. It's incredibly hard. What and the thought is that shortstops have moved to third in the past, right? A-Rod, when Jeter wouldn't move off shortstop with the Yankees in 2003 or 2004, went to third. So it's not an unnatural move, and their shortstop is usually your best player. You can usually handle anywhere else. But Bichette's throwing arm isn't great. He's coming off a knee injury that forced him to second in the World Series last year. So it's like, okay. And then again, the Moneyball line. It is not just a matter of put your best hitter at first base and and he'll be fine. Polanco's been okay. Bichette, his throws haven't been great, and it's the first week, but it's been a very weird. Like, how do you say you can improve your defense, and then you add two guys? Not only add two guys playing out of position for the first time in their lives, but the Mets' incumbent third baseman was a guy named Brett Beatty, who was their best defender last year by all the metrics. Even Lindor, wasn't as good as Beatty. Beatty played third and second with equal aplomb. So yesterday he played first. So I think like they had a plan, and it didn't go like they expected it to go. They were really in on Kyle Tucker for a while, and then of course he went to where else? The Dodgers. So within like a span of not even like 5 days in January, they lost Tucker, got Bichette to play third, got Robert Jr. to play center, and traded for Freddie Peralta, the pitcher from Milwaukee. So their pitching got better. Their bullpen is interesting. It's deep. They got more bodies, but are they as good as a bullpen led by Edwin Diaz, who covers up a lot of flaws, right? But then the flip side of that too is if you look at Edwin Diaz's baseball reference page, every other year is great, and every other year is a dud because he's a closer, right? There's only one Mariano Rivera who's great for 700 straight years. So it's interesting. It's a much different team. I've seen Mets teams overhaul, their rosters, and it's like shuffling the deck chairs. This is not like that. They got outside of Simeon, they got younger guys, guys still in their prime, 28, 29, 27. Well, Polanco's a little bit older. And the thought here is that they got a bunch of guys on short-term deals to kind of serve as the bridge to the homegrown core, the guys that they want them to help them become the East Coast Dodgers. So we'll see. I mean, prospects to me are just so unpredictable. I mean, you just never know. I mean, Jacob deGrom was like a 12th round draft pick or something. He was barely a top 10 prospect with the Mets in 2014. And if he can stay healthy enough and win another Cy Young, he's going to the Hall of Fame. You just never know with these things. Number one draft picks, something crazy happens. I mean, look at the Josh Hamilton story, right? Number one draft pick, got hurt, got in a lot of off-field trouble, and then in his mid-20s had like one of the great 3 or 4 year runs of all time, and then his body fell apart again. So it's always dangerous to me if you have the wherewithal as a big market team to get the best players in the market or retain them in your case with a Alonso or a Diaz, you should do it because the odds of all your players hitting, all your prospects hitting, not forget all, no one expects all of them to hit, but the odds of getting enough impact prospect players to develop as big leaguers to kind of work out the best case scenario, because everyone wants that, right? Even the Cubs want it. The Dodgers want it. They want the guys that can come up through a system and be great for 5 or 6 years before they got to pay them the big money. It just doesn't happen that way. Even the Dodgers, I think they're last year their best homegrown players were Will Smith, the catcher, Andy Pages, the center fielder, and Clayton, who was great, but he's at the end of his career. Who are their best players? Ohtani, free agent. Mookie Betts, ripped off the Red Sox. Freddie Freeman, Braves said we're going to go another direction for reasons I still don't understand. They won a World Series, right?
Yeah, that was puzzling.
The Mets breaking off in the core, fine. They didn't win anything. They didn't. And they made a couple LCS. They made one LCS. They won 100 games in 2022, but they always kill up short. So I get it. They didn't win anything. You want to break it up? Okay. But like the Braves won it with Freddie Freeman, who was Atlanta royalty. He should have been the next Chipper, the next. And again, he can't. That doesn't make sense to me. But anyway, so if I were running the Mets, and thank God for them, I'm not. I mean, to me, you got to keep Alonso. It's 35 home runs and 100 RBIs. Just pencil it in. That's not easy to find.
Plus, he's a clubhouse guy, right?
I thought he was a good clubhouse guy. The guys, the vibe, the unsafe, kind of read between the lines was we got to break something up at the clubhouse. It wasn't right. Okay, but when you stink down the stretch, of course it's not right. And like I get it. They were bad in 2024 when they got Jose Iglesias, a solid backup infielder, and he changed the vibes of that team. They went, they were like the best team in baseball after he got there. So there was probably something going on. I'm not saying a lot. I'm just saying in general, whatever it was wasn't working. But I don't know. I mean, I grew up reading stuff about the 77, 78 Yankees, and they hate each other. And they won championships and they're all that stuff. But Alonso always struck me as a solid guy in the clubhouse, and just again, is he going to be as great at 35 as he's at 30? No, but Steve Cohen can handle the sunk costs, right? Stick him at he was willing to DH more. He DH yesterday for Baltimore. DH him 5 days a week, 4 days a week, play him at first 2 days a week, and it's just and to me like you want to build a homegrown team, right? You want to build a homegrown core of champions, championship caliber team. What better way to do that than by retaining some of the guys who came up through the system and succeeded in New York? Alonso, again, Nimmo I got because he was declining a little bit. Jeff McNeil was a solid player, but he was a utility guy. You could replace him. But Diaz and Alonso, they were guys. Diaz flopped in New York in 2019. He was terrible. Got booed, lost his job twice. Came back and ended up, being a great closer, third best closer in team history in terms of saves, and had the viral moment every time he took the mound to the trumpets. Those guys are like, look, we are here to tell you this is how you do it. This is how you succeed in New York. This is how you fail in New York. If you stink, say I stunk. And to Bo Bichette's credit, yesterday he got booed, and after the game, they're like, "Were you surprised you got booed?" He's like, "No, it should have happened. Should have happened sooner. I would have booed myself." So and again, a guy like that, son of a big leaguer, they get it. You don't have to worry about the guys with good stock getting it. It's it may work out. Look, we may be here in October, and you're like, "Hey, how about watching the Mets in the World Series? What's Canyon Heroes like?" So it's a long season. I mean, they were terrible in 24, and then they made the World LCS. They were great to start last year. They missed the playoffs. It's a long way to go, but it's a very the pieces don't fit yet, but they don't have to fit yet. And look, it's not the baseball playoffs of our youth, right? You win your division, you go home. No, it's 12
Yeah.
teams.
Yeah.
And at some point, it's going to be 16. After all this lockout nonsense, they're going to expand, and it's going to be just like NHL and the NBA. It's going to be 16 teams, which is just bonkers. But anyway.
And I know we've only got a couple minutes left, but I wanted to ask you about what if you look into your crystal ball, what might happen in 2027.
Little my magic 8 ball here.
Yeah.
I mean, I alternate between feeling okay and really pessimistic, which is kind of like an allegory for today's times, right? Sometimes you feel really good, sometimes you don't. I mean, baseball is really doing well right now. The WBC was a bonker success. People are watching baseball in March over the NCAA over college basketball. And there's a story I haven't read it yet. There's a story on the Athletic about is MLB now the number 2 sport ahead of NBA behind the NFL. And if you think you're even in the ballpark, don't screw it up next year. But the owners really want a cap. They've never had a cap. Everyone else has a cap. The franchise worth is outrageously good. But as you know, if you have a cap, cost certainty, right? It'll be even better. And there is some. I think I know the owners sense some. I don't want to say dissension in the ranks, but some uncertainty within the ranks, because the CBA was approved in 2020. Was it 2022? 2022. The subcommittee, which is like the Lindors, Garrett Coles, Max Scherzer's. I think Simeon was on there. The big guys, the star players on that subcommittee voted against it, but everyone else voted for it. So it won 26-8. I think was the number. So every rank and file member, non-superstar, I guess, voted for it. And the stars were like, no, we don't like this deal. So there's some, Rob Manfred went around to clubhouses, been going to clubhouses saying, cap will help you all. It's like the wolf, telling you, let me near your house. Let me near your house. I'll blow enough. No, it's not going to help you. But, the free agent's gone slow. Free agent's gone really slow the last few years. And that's just the owner slow playing it. Okay. They want it like free agency frenzy in football or hockey or basketball. There's like 3 or 4 days in June, or not in this case, in December, where everything gets signed. But that's, if you're a player, and that's not the open market you want. It's not the free market you want. You want the market to dictate. It worked out for Alonso this year, but Bryce Harper, I think before the pandemic, the Phillies, signed in February. Manny Machado signed in February with the Padres. You want it so that, okay, maybe they're all kind of not conspiring, but they're all not signing me now. But what happens in February when there's a giant gaping hole in right field or third base? A team says, "Okay, here's your 7 years and whatever million." So I don't know. Like I said, some days I'm feeling really good, some days I don't. They really want to cap. That's the owners really want to cap. They are prepared. They have the money to survive a lockout. The players do too, but there's a big difference between owner money and player money.
Yeah.
And I just think like not to trend too far into other topics, but there's some bad ideas that have happened lately. Everyone knows are bad ideas, and why can't this happen too? I don't know. And if they break the union, like to me, the big thing it's going to come down to Rob Manfred, which he says this is his last CBA. He's retiring, I think, in 2029 or 2030, one of those years. You know, he's got ABS, which has been a huge success already. He's got replay, which has been amplified replay has been a big success. The pitch clock, big success. The games are shorter, obviously. People generally have gotten used to Ghost Runner. He's done a lot of things that are interesting and will define his legacy. Now, does he want to go for it all? He's going to the Hall of Fame no matter what. Bud Selig's in the Hall of Fame. If you're a commissioner, you make the Hall of Fame. You can oversee the cancellation of the World Series, a steroid era where you close your eyes and
Right.
and then say, "Oh, we can't have Barry Bonds as our home run king." Manfred's legacy is secure one way or the other. Does he want to go, all in and go for the cap? Because if he gets that cap, he's forever the guy who got the owners their cap. And as a commissioner, you're hired by the owners, and the owners want a cap. Or does he say, "Listen, we're in a good spot as a sport. People give up, what about us again? Finally, people care about us. We've got an every 3-year World Baseball Classic that's just doing bonkers business. We're going to be in the Olympics in 2028 in Los Angeles, in America. We've made improvements to the game to modernize it. We've got people watching and talking about the game. We could live to be 100 years, 100 more years, we'll never see another Otani. We are seeing players doing things that have never been done. Do you say, listen, we got to figure out a way, there'll be a lot of saber rattling. We got to figure out a way to get this 2027 season in. I don't know. I mean, I can see either way. Some days I'm like, oh, he's not going to let it get to, the cliff. There are days I'm like, oh, they've driven off the cliff once before, right? And if you're old like us, you remember 1994. People don't remember 1994 anymore. And if you drive off a cliff at 90, like you did in 94, you're not coming back. 94, the internet was in its infancy. People didn't have the distractions they've got now. If you give people a summer without Major League Baseball, they'll figure out a way to get by. You and I won't. You and I will come back in 28, 29, 30, 31, whatever. But the average fan is like, I'm good. Training camp starts in 6 weeks anyway. I'm good. So it's going to be really interesting. I don't know. Some days I'm really pessimistic. Some days I'm optimistic. It's going to come down to Rob Manfred. What do you want your legacy to be? Do you want to be the guy that got the owners their cap? Because he can do that. I think they can win that war. I do. I don't want to say war. They can win that battle. I think they've got the war chest. I said war again, sorry. They've got the chest to survive that. The players, I think it's easier. I don't think it's not a guarantee, but I think the players are more vulnerable than they've ever been before. I do think that. I think that, back in 94, you had guys who remember the 81 strike and the 70 and the 85 strike. There was a strike in 85. There was a lockout in 90. You had guys who remembered what life was like and what you were, quote unquote, fighting for. This time, no one younger than 30 has seen a work stoppage, 32. I just, and like the players see the NHL. Everyone gets paid in the NHL. Everyone's happy in the NHL, right? Everyone gets paid in the NBA. Everyone else has a cap. No one playing ball today, if you're a routine major league player, knows life without a cap in our leagues. And it works well for them. Why can't it work for us? So I think the players can be broken. I don't know if they will be, but I think there's a better chance of it than there certainly was in 94 or in the subsequent negotiations, 02, 06. And it sucks because there was a nice period of peace, relative peace, which I guess, again, talk about the world, right? There's always little pockets where things are great, and then all our worst instincts kick in again, right? So, why can't it be like 06 and 10 and 14? It just happened. The new CBA was negotiated. people, you know, the owners want the cap, and they got a better shot. And like someone wrote today, recently, I think maybe the Athletic, if the players win this round and don't get a cap, and that's victory for them. They don't get a cap. Then why can they ever take the owners seriously again, right? So if you're the owners, it's the Hamilton song. This is your shot. Don't throw away your shot. So I don't know. Certainly a lockout without a doubt in December, no doubt, and we'll bleed into spring training, and then it becomes like it did in 2022, the drop dead dates, which are always a few days later than that, right? Manfred's proud of never losing a game to a lockout, a labor labor issue. They had to cram games in 2022, but they got them in. What happens if they lose opening day? If you get to mid March of 2027, you're like, okay, we can't play opening day. Is that like, okay, heck with it? If you're the owner's like, we can sit it out now, we're good. Or is it still like we can salvage the half season July 4th? America, we'll play,
Right.
start opening day. I don't know. It's really 50-50. It's kind of uncertain. I would just, enjoy this season if you're a baseball fan. I just don't know what's next. I just don't know. We could be sitting here a year from now talking about the Mets opening weekend. We could be sitting here going, I don't know what's next. So I wish I had a better answer for you. If I did, I'd be making a lot more money because I could tell everybody what's going on. But enjoy the season and then just see what happens after that.
Seems like a good place to close
Yeah.
things out. Jerry,
Yep.
thank you so much. Jerry Beach has been our guest, and I wish this is the point when we'd say something like, and as by being our guest today, you get a happy cooker from Weber, but
That's right.
we don't have that budget yet. But
Do you have a
Jerry,
take home? Do you have a take home game like the Wheel of Fortune? Remember the people losing Wheel of Fortune?
Yeah,
Jerry lost, but he gets a take home game.
and I used to remember when you could put things on account. And I mean, there's a whole generation that's like, what the hell are you talking about? And who's this Susan Stafford person that you're referring to? And R.I.P. Chuck Woolery. But Jerry, it's been a hoot as always, and thank you so much. And
thanks for having me on. Appreciate it.
Yeah, we'll have to do this again at some.
Absolutely. Everyone be well. Appreciate having me on, and talk to you everyone soon.
All right.
Thanks, man.